At the crack of dawn, Yang Kai woke up, briefly washed up, and took the broom from the corner of the wall before leaving his small, solitary hut. Standing at the door, he stretched lazily, gazed at the white belly of the fish appearing on the horizon, closed his eyes to enjoy a moment of tranquility, and then opened his eyes to swing the broom in his hand, diligently cleaning the dust and fallen leaves on the ground. Dressed in plain and clean blue clothes, the mature color made the young man seem a few years older. Yang Kai's waist was as straight as a spear. Even when doing the most menial tasks, his expression was serious and his movements were steady. He held the broom with both hands without exerting much force, and his body barely moved. Relying solely on the rotation of his wrists, the broom moved as if it was an extension of his arm, sweeping here and there. As he moved, the accumulated dust and debris on the ground miraculously followed, as if they had suddenly grown two legs. Yang Kai was a trial disciple of Ling Xiao Pavilion. He joined the sect 3 years ago to begin his cultivation, but he had only reached the 3rd level of body tempering realm so far. Those who joined the sect with him had long surpassed this stage, seizing opportunities to become disciples of the sect's experts and achieving great success, while he could only sigh in envy. 3 years of cultivation only resulted in the 3rd level of body tempering realm. Such talent could not be described as ordinary, but rather extremely mediocre. With no other choice, Yang Kai could only take up the job of sweeping in the sect, maintaining his livelihood while painstakingly cultivating. Ling Xiao Pavilion was a somewhat special sect, with this specialty being reflected in the cruel competition among its disciples. In this sect, the capable would rise to the top while the incapable would be eliminated. The law of the survival of the fittest was vividly demonstrated in Ling Xiao Pavilion. Other sects might have some camaraderie and brotherhood among their disciples, but not in Ling Xiao Pavilion. To climb up, one had to step on the shoulders of those so-called senior and junior brothers, trampling over their blood. Only then would they be eligible. The discipline within Ling Xiao Pavilion was strict, and its reputation was well known throughout the entire Great Han Dynasty. Although it wasn't considered a super sect, the cruel competition among its disciples was unparalleled. As a result, the disciples were all valiant and fierce, rarely provoked by others when traveling outside in the world. There is a rule in the Ling Xiao Pavilion that disciples under the age of 14, regardless of who they are, have a trial period of 3 years from the time they start practicing. During these 3 years, their food, clothing, and shelter are provided by the sect, and they are only responsible for practicing. If they can break through the body tempering stage within 3 years, they will be eligible to become disciples of the high-level experts in the sect and be taught by them. Of course, they can also choose to practice on their own without a master, but having a good teacher to guide them is essential on the path of cultivation. In a sense, this rule of the Ling Xiao Pavilion is quite liberal. Those who do not break through the body tempering stage within 3 years either leave the sect or become trial disciples. Yang Kai is currently a trial disciple, a shameful identity in the Ling Xiao Pavilion. Unlike ordinary disciples, the living environment of trial disciples is more harsh because they have to take care of everything themselves, such as food, clothing, and shelter. The sect will not waste any cultivation resources on them. Once someone becomes a trial disciple, it is basically impossible for them to succeed in life unless they can make a significant breakthrough in their strength within a short period of time, and the sect sees that they have the potential to invest in. There are 3,000 disciples in the entire Ling Xiao Pavilion, but how many trial disciples are there? Only a handful. Yang Kai is lucky enough to be one of them. For a trial disciple to survive in the Ling Xiao Pavilion is as difficult as reaching the heavens. For example, the small wooden house where Yang Kai currently lives was built by himself, one piece of wood at a time. The roof of the house has a few holes that he doesn't have time to fix, and when it rains, the water accumulates inside. He buys his own clothes and prepares his own food. Everything is his responsibility. Even the location of the small wooden house is in the most remote and deserted place in the Ling Xiao Pavilion. Such treatment is difficult for most people to endure, which is also why there are so few trial disciples in the Ling Xiao Pavilion. Basically, those disciples who do not break through the body tempering stage after the trial period will choose to leave the Ling Xiao Pavilion. but Yang Kai chose to stay. Having been kicked out of the sect once before, how could he give up now? After being demoted to a trial disciple a few months ago, Yang Kai took up a job cleaning the sect to make a living. It can be said that Yang Kai is now both a trial disciple and a servant in the Ling Xiao Pavilion. However, even this cleaning job sometimes cannot guarantee Yang Kai's food and clothing. He sometimes goes hungry and sometimes eats well. No one cares about him in the cold wind. Although life is miserable, Yang Kai has never given up. In this world, one is only a few decades of life. He chose this path and must continue on it. Giving up halfway is not the act of a man. Yang Kai has a toughness, a never-give-up attitude that won't stop until he hits a wall. The sky gradually brightened as Yang Kai swept the floor, leaving behind a clean and dust-free space. Although sweeping the floor doesn't take much effort, after a whole morning of working on an empty stomach, Yang Kai was sweating profusely. It had nothing to do with his strength, but purely because his physical condition was so poor. With 2 meals of the day skipped, nobody could maintain good physical health in Yang Kai's living environment. Gradually, some disciples of the Ling Xiao Pavilion gathered around him, all of them getting up early and not practicing but instead surrounding Yang Kai. Many of them looked at Yang Kai with interest, and some even looked at him greedily, as if he were a beautiful woman wearing nothing but a seductive fragrance. There was a tense competitive atmosphere among the Ling Xiao Pavilion disciples gathered around Yang Kai, and they looked around at each other with caution. Their faces were not friendly. Someone in the crowd looked uncomfortable and whispered, "There are too many people here. It's too much." Someone immediately replied, "If you think there are too many people, you can leave. Nobody's asking you to stay." With just one sentence, the person was left speechless. Everyone knew why they were gathered here and why they were staring at Yang Kai. They were waiting for the moment to arrive. Time was running out, and leaving now would be a pity. If they could get the first share, today would be a profitable day. Yang Kai was aware of the commotion around him, but he remained unfazed. He experienced this kind of situation every 5 days, 6 times a month. It was nothing to be surprised about, and the number of people gathered around him was relatively small. They hadn't all arrived yet. So he continued to sweep the floor, ignoring the people around him, sweeping as he walked. As time passed, more and more people gathered around Yang Kai. Roughly estimating, there were at least 30 to 40 people. Suddenly, Yang Kai stepped back and sat down in the middle of the road, taking a deep breath to restore the energy he had spent early in the morning. At this sight, everyone around Yang Kai immediately dispersed and surrounded him, and the tense competitive atmosphere rose to a new level. It was as if the air had stopped moving. Everyone was eyeing each other, but they all looked at Yang Kai with great anticipation. If someone who didn't know the truth saw this scene, they might think that a supreme master was surrounded by so many people, and that's why they were sent to deal with him. But in reality, Yang Kai was just a trial disciple with a cultivation level of the 3rd level of body tempering. Anyone present was more powerful than Yang Kai. "Yang Kai, don't bother trying. Just call us and we'll knock you down. It'll save us all time, won't it?" someone sneered, looking down on Yang Kai. Yang Kai, you should understand our feelings. We're different from you. After this fight, we still have to go practice, another person said, as if Yang Kai was being disrespectful by taking time to recover. Yang Kai remained indifferent, as if he were a meditating monk. Time continued to pass, and suddenly, a melodious and spacious bell rang out. It was the morning bell of the Ling Xiao Pavilion, and the sound reached everyone's ears. The disciples surrounding Yang Kai all felt a shock of energy. Yang Kai is now both a trial disciple and a janitor at Ling Xiao Ge. However, even with his janitorial duties, sometimes he cannot maintain his own livelihood. He occasionally goes hungry and cold, and his life is miserable. Despite this, Yang Kai has never given up. He has a resilient spirit that doesn't give up until he hits a wall. As the morning dawned, Yang Kai swept the floor for a while, leaving a clean trail behind him. Although sweeping didn't take much effort, not eating or drinking early in the morning made Yang Kai sweat profusely due to his poor physical condition. With 2 out of 3 meals a day going hungry, anyone in Yang Kai's living conditions would have a poor constitution. Ling Xiao Ge disciples gradually surrounded Yang Kai. Each of them got up early and didn't practice but gathered around Yang Kai. Many of them looked at Yang Kai with interest, and some even looked greedily, as if Yang Kai were a naked beauty with a fragrant scent. Among the Ling Xiao Ge disciples surrounding Yang Kai, there was an atmosphere of intense competition and tension. They looked at each other warily, and their faces were unkind. Someone in the crowd murmured, "So many people, some of them are too much." Another person immediately replied, "If you think there are too many people, you can leave. No one asked you to stay." Everyone knew why they were gathered here and why they were staring at Yang Kai. They were waiting for the moment to come. The time limit was approaching, and leaving now would be a pity. If they could take the lead, it would be a harvest for them. Yang Kai naturally knew the commotion around him, but he didn't change his expression. He went through this every 5 days, 6 times a month. It was not a big deal, and the number of people around him was slightly less than usual. He just kept sweeping and ignored the people around him. As time passed, more and more people gathered around Yang Kai, with an estimated number of at least 30 or 40 people. Suddenly, a melodious and open bell rang. It was Ling Xiao Ge's morning bell, which rang 9 times, and the eastern sun rose, signaling a new day. The breathing of the crowd suddenly calmed down, and they all stared at Yang Kai, who was surrounded in the middle. Yang Kai slowly stood up, holding the broomstick in his hand, and glanced at the people around him. "Choose me, senior brother Yang," someone shouted. "I'm gentle, and I promise not to hurt you." "Bullshit. Choose me. I'll give you a quick and painless fight. I won't waste everyone's time. Choose me. Choose me." The scene was lively, like vendors selling their vegetables in the market and competing to see whose produce was the freshest. "Yang Kai, don't ruin the rules you set for yourself," someone reminded loudly. Yang Kai chuckled and casually threw the broom he was holding into the air. Dozens of eyes looked up expectantly, eagerly waiting for the moment the broom would land, praying fervently in their hearts, "Pick me, pick me." Time seemed to slow down as the broom spun in the air a few times before falling to the ground and bouncing once before coming to a stop. The broom's head pointed towards a burly teenager in the crowd. A wave of disappointment and bitterness swept through the onlookers, but the burly young man walked out of the crowd with a laugh, clasping his fists towards everyone. "Fellow senior brothers, today I have won this battle. I hope you won't hold it against me." "Damn, what a lucky bastard," someone exclaimed in jealousy. "Why couldn't I be chosen? I come here every 5 days and have been here for a whole month." "Are you doing this on purpose, Yang Kai?" another grumbled. "Don't even mention it. I've been here for 3 months and have never been chosen once," another chimed in. "Senior brother, you have it worse than me." "Not really, we're just here to watch the show." 2 senior brothers exchanged a knowing look and laughed. The rest of the crowd dispersed, leaving only Yang Kai and the burly young man facing each other. "Yang Kai, trial disciple, 3 levels of body tempering," Yang Kai declared. "Zhao Dingjun, regular disciple, 5 levels of body tempering," the burly young man introduced himself. The disciples of the Ling Xiao Pavilion were divided into different levels, from the bottom to the top: trial disciple, regular disciple, seat disciple, elite disciple, and core disciple. Zhao Dingjun claimed to be a regular disciple, which meant he hadn't been accepted as a disciple by any high-level experts yet. If he were to break through the body tempering period and be accepted as a disciple by a high-level expert, he would become a seat disciple, the next level up. Elite disciples were even higher, selected from among the seat disciples, each of them outstanding in their own right. Core disciples were the future successors of the Ling Xiao Pavilion, groomed to take over the sect. The hierarchical system of the disciples of the Ling Xiao Pavilion may seem heartless, but it served to inspire young people's fighting spirit and competitive nature, and was the foundation of the Ling Xiao Pavilion's ruthless regime. The reason why Yang Kai was sought after by so many people was due to another rule of the Ling Xiao Pavilion, the challenge rule.